Hello, my name is Anshay Hashalom in the Psych 334 class of Experimental Psychology, and today I will be doing my PowerPoint on the importance of early education on racism. I think that it is important that we discuss to children at a young age about the ramifications of racism so that we can prevent miscommunications by children in the future. Early education on racism. Early education on racism is important to prevent more and more bystanders. What do I mean by that? We have a situation, what we call the bystander effect, where an event is happening and somebody is just, as the term says, standing by it, not and just watching it happen. More and more, I've noticed, and research has showed in videos that have publicly been shown as that have gone viral of people just standing by and watching incidents happen, such as the beating up of somebody because of their skin tone or the dragging of somebody. More and more often, we see people more likely to record a video of the situation instead of helping out. Delaying of education on racism can create miscommunication on important issues. I do think that there is a misconcept about education. Educating kids on the importance of racism is not going to traumatize the child. It's going to make the child more self-aware and make them more likely to avoid a prejudicial point of view and to understand that having a prejudicial point of view on anybody because of their skin tone is ridiculous. The next generation can and should be more aware of social prejudices and should be responsible of dimming it down and then so on and so forth until there is a complete end to racism. I believe that it is possible. I think that is completely plausible. My research question is, how does the educational system's shortcoming in regards to troubled history lead to the endless cycle of miscommunication, misinformation, and racism? What do I mean by this information? I do believe that the educational system tries to shield their children away from the hardships of the world. In a recent survey, there was a lot of people who did not truly understand the real reason why the Civil War had happened, and I do think that issues like this arise and issues like this should be solved. Something as simple as the reason that the Civil War started should not be something that about 2/3 of Americans or 2/3 of people really understand how it happened. I do think that it is important to understand that parties such as the Black Panther Party was not an anarchy system trying to uproot everything American. I do think it is important for children to understand that these things happened, these horrible events happened because some people were not mature enough to realize that what they are doing are hurting people and creating trauma for the next generation. So I do think that the educational system's shortcomings should be shown and highlighted even so that these children understand that there is nothing to gain from having this attitude or this prejudicial point of view. And my hypothesis is it is more likely children will be more susceptible to racism and can't even be raised in an environment where racism is the norm, unless we educate these children at an early age and show them the instances of racism, show them that prejudice is not the way to go. While I do say that it is important that children get an early education, it should be a consensus all around within all parties that early education is important. The criteria should be strictly based upon teachers and parents. Both of these categories are necessary in a child's growth and education, and they are more likely the reasons why a child comes out the way they are, whether the child's environment at the house or the child's environment while with the teacher. So I do think that it is important that for this research that we should look into the parents and the teachers so that we can get a consensus and see a middle ground into why it is necessary for these children, or why is it necessary for early education and racism, and see how people feel about that topic. A simple 50-question survey will be used to gauge a person's perspective on early education and racism. Participants will be quarantined off from other participants and answer the questions all in one sitting, and the ANOVA will be used to gauge a person's likeliness to educate a child or their child in the manner of racism. So what do I mean? I mean essentially that it is important that we understand how the parents and teachers feel about teaching this, because anybody can say teaching about it is important, but as we know, it is extremely important and more likely that we have to get the teachers and parents permission in order to teach these things. A lot of the time, a reason where children are essentially shied away from the reality of racism is because the parents believe that it is not something that a child will be completely capable of. So I think it is important with this survey, which will dive into a person's perspective on racism itself and understand if a person is willing to participate in teaching early education or try and brush off the importance of racism. And that is what this survey will show. It'll gauge somebody's perspective and understand why someone would feel hesitant to talk about, or why someone would feel that it is important to teach about racism. In these surveys, subjects will essentially be putting their own bias in the survey, regardless of if it is anonymous or not. But this simple survey, as mentioned before, can gauge how these educators and parents feel about this subject and the importance of teaching this subject. Anonymous surveys are extremely important because having your name on something and showing your bias can be very stressful in a person's life. So an anonymous survey can help relieve the stress put on somebody when they are taking this survey and not having a sense of feeling as if their opinions or their feeling will be judged. Hiding away from these tough subjects will not help the child personally, and it shields them and may even cause them to go down a bad path. As we see, there are people in this world who did not get the proper education on racism and time and time again will miscommunicate and will misinterpret situations. And I think it is important to make sure that these types of situations are limited or are even non-existent. In conclusion, it is important to recognize that not talking about these subjects is the equivalent of letting racism be a norm in society. I think that this can help us better understand why generations in the past may not have had a better understanding in racism, or it can even help us understand why racism has lasted for so long. This could truly help researchers in the future find ways to understand the true carnage that racism doesn't understand, where this sense of where everybody can collectively agree that this is a horrible manner, yet it still is strong even today, and how even now in the age of technology where stuff can be shown on the internet, it's still repeating in a constant manner. I think it is important for us to understand this, and it's better for us to really dive into somebody's psyche and mentality in regards to this subject, so that we can find out how we can help these children, this next generation, this upcoming generation, and teach them the importance of not being racist and understanding that prejudice isn't good. Thank you for your time.